think that's like a sign from God. It says go. Where am I supposed to go?
So how's everyone's week been while we stall for him to get a mic? Fast? Yeah.
Is that because you're not eating or?
Maybe. Kind of fast. This is a cute little stand.
Punk.
They're all falling apart around here.
I hope you got that audio.
That's fine. Or do we want to use yours?
No, I'm just gonna hold it.
Okay.
Sorry.
We've made it. Oh, there we go. That works.
If I need it, I don't think I'll need it.
Okay, are you starting or am I starting?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, guys. My name is Pastor Christian. You guys can call me Christian or Chris the Dude, because I'm a super famous Christian rapper. I got 24 monthly listeners, probably 21 by now. So I can't believe there's 21 people listening to my music. That is insane. Because it's like not great, but it's good, you know, really good. Type deal. It's not terrible.
It's really good. I'm one of those listeners. How dare you?
He's the number one in 21. But yeah, my name's Christian. I like to sit inside and watch TV on a couch. That's fantastic. And cutting hair. I've been doing that lately. Just if you guys don't know that much about me. And this is my beautiful wife, AJ. She's the youth pastor here. Did you want to say any awkward things about yourself?
I don't think so. Hi.
Okay. So tonight we really want to paint a picture of not only our personal experiences, dating and things like that, our backstories, but also paint a picture of, is it hot?
Yeah, I'll get you.
Okay.
Keep talking.
I like hot mics. Because then you can go like this, right? I like hot mics. Okay. It's not to be confused with guys named Mike that are hot. Okay, I'm just kidding.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. So, where was I at?
I don't know. I feel like I should take over at this point.
No, there's one thing I want. Oh, okay. So tonight we're gonna share some of our stories with you guys, but we're gonna also provide some of our practical learning experiences, because not every a relationship is based on this really strong emotion called infatuation. Some of it is like doing math, where you think, okay, this just doesn't add up, or this does add up. So we're going to share some of our practicals with you as well through this time. But we're going to start out with our stories. The biggest thing I want you guys to take away, if you zone out and this whole thing, which would be awful, but if you happen to zone out this whole thing, the one thing I want you to know is that if loving God, loving people, and spreading the good news are not the most important things in your life, good luck finding a meaningful, authentic, lifelong heterosexual relationship. Good luck. So, healthy relationship. So if loving God, loving people, and making Him known aren't the top priority in your life, it's going to be very hard to have a healthy, authentic relationship.
Yeah. So 1 Corinthians 11:1, Paul says this, and it just simply says, you should imitate me. This is Paul talking. You should imitate me just as I imitate Christ. And I feel like this is just such a great verse for any Christian to really make a mantra of their lives. But I think it also applies in the context of relationships. Like you said, we're just going to kind of tell our story and hopefully share some of the things that we did that was helpful, or things people have taught us that were helpful, and hopefully give you some practical insight into relationships, whether you're single, whether you're dating, whether you're engaged, whether you're married, whatever stage. Hopefully it is impactful to you in some way. But you should imitate me just as I imitate Christ. I feel like if this is how we're living, then you're going to make a great spouse one day. So imitate me as I imitate Christ. If I'm really exemplifying Christ in the way that I live, then I'm going to love my husband well. And if he's truly exemplifying Christ in the way that he's living, then he's going to love me well.
Notice the key word truly, representing Christ. Because if we're cussing somebody out, or we're hitting our spouse, or we're yelling, we're not really truly representing Christ in those situations. We're not being like Jesus. Those are extreme examples, but even the small things of like, if your wife doesn't want to drive for an hour drive, are you going to take the steering wheel and take the L and drive that drive to like Lansing from here? You know what I mean? So like, it's just small things too. You're being like Christ. You're being sacrificial. You're being servant-minded. I do want to say one more scripture is seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all other things will be added unto you. That's one that I truly believe in. And it's like, you guys, it's so funny because it's like, these guys are talking about Jesus, right? And we come to church, we expect to hear about Jesus, right? So it's like this thing, but it can become monotonous and mundane. But Jesus is not a mundane thing. He is so powerful, and we need to know that in our hearts, that like if we really make the most powerful God to ever exist, the only God to ever exist, number one in our lives, then it can really change things for us and really have a life-altering effect. So I'm going to start sharing now because I'm done preaching. But, so I'm just going to start with my story. But I also want to let you guys know if there's any questions afterward, that will be open for. But, yeah, since I was a kid, when I was a kid, my parents were divorced 3 times each. So, like, I've been through 5 divorces because each of them divorced each other. So I've lived through 5 divorces in my life. So my parents did not have healthy marriages growing up. So for me, I'm not just some church guy. I grew up in Section 8 subsidized living. So I grew up with kids where cockroaches were coming out of every crevice of a house, like with kids where pornography was laying in their parents' basement, and there's people getting shot at regularly around where I lived, and domestic abuse was high where I lived. So I got to see a woman's face bloodied up with a cleat, things like that. So I've seen some really unhealthy relationships in this setting. And then my parents also didn't have the most healthy relationships either. But I'm prefacing this to say that it was something that was so highly desired for me to have a successful relationship, because I felt like my parents didn't have a healthy, successful relationship in their life. So I'm like, this is goal number 1. I'm talking like kindergarten. Like, I'm trying to date, right? And that's crazy, but
he's not exaggerating, guys.
no, like I had a girlfriend in kindergarten, so I was
and
that
in
kid.
First grade and second grade and
And
third
so,
grade.
yeah,
He's
so
definitely lost track.
But it wasn't like I'm like this like chick magnet. It was like I need this relationship because my parents don't have this great relationship, but I want to believe that something like this exists. And so there was this chasing of like, I want to see if I can find this relationship. But so I dated a lot to figure that out. I wanted a healthy marriage and family one day. But I wasn't really going for I'm not the typical oh, she's an athlete, the popular girl. I was like, okay, she gets decent grades and she treats people decently, so I'm interested in her. Just to give some background for me. And then dating, and then I tried later dating for looks solely. And that was a horrible decision that I could tell that to every man in here, that just dating a woman because of the way she looks, that's how you get ultimatums. You know what I'm saying? That's how you get the girl that's crazy enough to give you an ultimatum. So just I don't know, I figured to share that. But dating didn't help me figure out what a healthy relationship looks like, only what an unhealthy one looks like. So it really didn't give me to that next step of how do I find a healthy soulmate or whatever. And so I had a lot of experience of what it didn't look like, but I couldn't figure out what it looked like. But later, I started really putting God first. And I remember I was dating this girl in Bible college, purely for looks, and which is a stupid thing to do, first of all. But you have to learn by touching the stove sometimes. So I was dating this girl, and she was like, I want you to move across the state for me, rent an apartment for $900 a month while you're going full-time Bible college, and I want you to live out here for the summer and not go on the mission trip that you feel like the Lord's calling you to go on. So
red flag, red flag, red flag.
So she's giving me this ultimatum of she eventually ends up giving me this ultimatum if you don't move out here and away from your family, which my parents weren't really in a good place at the time, so I felt like I had to be near home. And she wanted me to move all the way out there. So I said, I said to her, I can't do that. And then I remember praying to the Lord that day. I'm like, it was like the last day for me to sign up for this 2-month mission trip. I said, God, if you want me to go, she's going to have to call me and break up with me because I can't do it. I'm a pansy. So this girl ends up calling me that day that I prayed that and breaking up with me.
Hallelujah, praise
So
Jesus.
I got to sign up for the missions trip. So it was just so cool that God was trying to make a way for me to, through my fallibility and my mistakes and my lack of understanding about the human experience, I was trying to figure things out on my own, but really all I needed to do was just serve God and do what He's calling me to do with my life. So I do that. Then while I'm in El Salvador, I feel like the Lord's telling me to take a year off dating because I had some sexual struggles in my life, some lust. And so I was on this 2-month mission trip. And while I was on this mission trip, this girl walks off the plane in, I think it's Texas, because we have to catch 2 planes. So I fly from Michigan to Texas and Texas to El Salvador. And this girl comes off the plane, she's pretty. And I'm like, man, I would totally date her. And on a year off dating, of course, I'm thinking I'm going to date this girl a year later, whatever. Irrational Chris. And so then this other, you guys know how it is. You're single when you're single and you are just looking right everywhere. And then this other girl comes off the plane. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'd date her. So we're in El Salvador for 2 months, and the girl that I originally was like, man, I would totally date her. She was a total jerk. And then the girl I was passed on because she wasn't really my type initially, was the one that was doing her devotionals in the morning, having an encounter with God every day, super cool, great friend, all these things. And no, this wasn't AJ, but it taught me a valuable lesson. And that lesson was that you're better off marrying a friend that you become attracted to than trying to marry somebody just based on their looks. And so, for their character. So fast forward, I come back from El Salvador, I get a calling to the Philippines, a repetitive calling where I'm like, God, make it super obvious to me. And I'm just meeting Filipino people in El Salvador regularly, which is such a weird thing because it's a 24-hour flight or whatever. It's a around-the-world flight to get to the Philippines from El Salvador. And I don't think people have the money to be flying that far in El Salvador. So I'm just running into these Filipino people. And I'm like, this is crazy. And so I get back to school and I'm like, there's no way I'm ever getting married. Because I'm called to missions in the Philippines, and there's no way I'm going to meet a girl who loves Jesus, who's pretty, who who's truly loves Jesus, and who is pretty, who I'm attracted to, and who wants to do missions in the Philippines. And sure enough, I come into this school, and I said, it's like a needle in a haystack. And the Lord, yeah, you want to? Go ahead. And so I'm saying to the Lord, I'm just going to marry a Filipino lady one of these long, 10 years from now or whatever, right? So stupid. Crazy, right? And then God's like, yeah, I got you. Because this blonde girl walks in and she's called to the Philippines. And I'm like, what are the odds of that? There's no odds in that. So
that's kind of his backstory of before I entered the picture. So I'm going to give a little bit of my backstory. My backstory is completely opposite of him. I grew up at this church, great family, great upbringing, nothing to complain about at all. My parents have been married for 30 some years, have stayed together. Personally though, I wasn't exposed to a lot of super healthy marriages. So there was kind of in me I was yeah, I like the idea of romance and stuff, but I don't know if I ever want to go through the effort of being married. And so I kind of felt that way most of high school and going into college. I just don't know if marriage is worth it. I want to have kids someday, but the marriage part, I don't know. That just seems everyone I know that's married has to give up all this freedom. They have to settle down and they're not content. Not every scenario, but I just kept seeing that more than happy, content couples. And so I was maybe I just won't get married. And so that's kind of where I was at. But it's interesting. Middle school is when I really became on fire for Jesus. I had known him because I was raised in a Christian household, but that's when I was it became a personal relationship. And around that time, I felt God told me not to date in high school. This was in 8th grade. And so in 8th grade, I wasn't really like wanting to date anyways. But I was like, okay, God, if you don't want me to date in high school, I won't date in high school. And so I kind of like made this vow that I wouldn't. And I'm really grateful I did, because I'm like, I think God kept me from a lot of people that I needed to not be dating. So thank you, Lord Jesus. But then the end of high school comes around. I'm about to go off to Bible college, and I'm like, okay, like, I don't know, maybe I'll like date someone in college. I don't really know. I still don't know if like marriage is even worth it. So like, I'm not gonna date if I'm not gonna get married. So I was like, well, just in case I do end up meeting someone, I want to like know in my mind ahead of time. I had someone tell me like it's good to like know what your like non-negotiable things are before you meet someone. And so I kind of like made a little list in this little orange notebook that I still have actually, which I meant to look for it to pull it out, because I'm like, that'd be fun to look through again.
Here's a practical tip: if non-negotiables, you probably should write this part down.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about like he has to be tall, dark, and handsome and rich. Like if that's your non-negotiables, like go home right now. Like you're not ready for everything else we're about to say. Like just stop listening at this point. I'm talking about like needs to be sold out for Jesus. Like I was called into ministry at that point. Like is called into ministry or is like supportive of me in the ministry role that God's called me in. Like wants to adopt. Like that was something that was important to me at that point. Like is someone who is open and honest. Like that was something that I had just seen so many, like destroy so many marriages. So I was like, if I'm gonna be with someone, they've gotta be open and honest. They've gotta be like, you know, and so I just like make these like, okay, these are like legitimate things that like I'm not willing to be with someone if like this is not where they're at kind of thing. And like, again, not superficial stuff, but like important stuff. And then at that point is when we met, which happened to be on 9/11, 2017, on 9/11, I know, of all days. And he kind of mentioned before how we met. But we started talking, and at first, he introduced himself to me, and we were in a class together, and the teacher was like, hey, has anyone been on any missions trips? And I had mentioned, like, oh yeah, I just got back from the Philippines. He's sitting behind me in this class, and he like whispers to me, he's like, psst, psst. He's like, hey, I was in El Salvador this summer, and God called me to the Philippines. Like, we should totally talk on break. And I just look at him, and I'm like, dude, that's like the worst way to pick up a girl ever. Like, what are you trying to make me believe? Like, I called you to the Philippines and El Salvador. Like, bro, like, try harder. Like, I was just like not impressed. Like, this guy, I'm like, he's a total joke. Turns out I like totally misread the situation. I was like, oh crap, he's actually serious. Like, I'm sorry about that. So we started talking. Did you want to add anything in?
You're good.
Okay.
I like it.
We started talking, and then once I started realizing, oh, he's legit, I started to like him, and he liked me, and so it was like the cute little flirty phase.
She walked in. I wasn't like, man, that girl is attractive. Like, she knows this. Like, I wasn't like, this is like the girl I'm going to marry. It was just like, oh, she's called the Philippines.
Yeah.
This is an option. This is a valid option. Like, I'm just being like straight up, right? It's not like she walked in, she had like, she's chiseled, she's like doing like 20 pull-ups or something. It's like, I'm not like, you know what I mean? She's not like speaking 10 different languages. I'm just like, oh, she's pretty and she's nice, like, and she's called the Philippines. Like, I should just talk to her, just figure out things. So.
And the feeling was mutual. I was like,
she didn't feel that way about me either.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Just so you guys know.
We both were like, all right, let's kind of be friends-ish, sort of. And then as we started talking about like the Lord and like our callings and different things and different passions, we were like, oh, like, shoot, okay, like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, okay, and attraction started to grow at that point. So met on 9/11. On Halloween, he tells me he likes me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I like you too. And then he leaves. And then after the end of that, I was like, wasn't he supposed to ask me out? Like, I've never like done this before. I'm like, I didn't date all of high school, but I was like, I think you're supposed to ask me out. I was like, what do I do now? Like, am I supposed to ask him out? And I'm like, all confused.
I said, this is what I said to her. I said, I just want to let you know I like you, just in case somebody's more handsome, funnier, nicer than me comes by. I just want to put in my, like, application. Say that I like you.
That's true. He said exactly that. So then I'm like on cloud nine. I'm like, this is great. And then like the next time we see each other, he's like, hey, by the way, I'm 6 months into taking a year off dating.
I was
And I was like,
it was like 4,
oh.
honey.
I just did the math yesterday because I was like, I gotta figure this out.
Oh, when I told you.
Yeah, when you told me. Yeah, when you met, it was less.
Yeah.
You're right. And I was like, okay, cool. What are we supposed to do in the meantime? Like, now we like each other, like, we kind of are flirting with each other, but now, like, I can't date you for 6 months. Which ended up being, like, the best possible scenario to be in.
So before this, I would just, like, ask a girl out and just date this girl, right? But because I was taking this year off dating, which God knew I needed to do, I actually had to build a relationship that wasn't focused on, like, hey, you want to go to the movies and, like, kiss or something? You know what I mean? Like, I actually had to build and it makes you sound like a jerk, but I thought that was, like, in movies, that's all you see, right? It's like, oh, we met, we fell in love, our eyes hit, right? Just right, and the light was just right, the hallmark.
And then we had the hand thing in the movies.
Yeah, where it's like...
Do it. No, you gotta use this hand.
What?
The little...
That thing?
And then it turns into a holding hand.
Yeah. No, so it's like, it wasn't like that. So it was just a very interesting experience for me. You gotta think, you know, it's just like, I'm actually like hanging out with this girl in groups of people.
Right.
At this time, and not like taking her to Bigby or something, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we were just friends. Like, we would talk on the phones a lot of times. We would hang out in groups of friends. We didn't do anything physical. It was just purely a friendship. And throughout this time, and we had 6 months to be friends that we knew liked each other. So we took advantage of that time to really get to know each other. And so
I want to encourage guys, if you want to get to know a girl without being physical first, that's amazing. It's fantastic.
Respect. And I, at this point, was like, well, I kind of have high standards. Like, I don't know, like, is this guy gonna, like, I'm going through my, like, non-negotiable list. I'm like, seems like he's, lining up with, like, the person, like, I would be willing to date. But we kind of took that opportunity to really, like, talk about the things that were important to us. Like, hey, do you want kids? Like, no, yes, like, hey, like, tell me more about your calling. Like, what do you see that looking like in the future? Like, and just, like, having those conversations that normally wouldn't happen in, like, the friendship stage, but we had, like, a weird situation that I think was, like, totally awesome, that we were able to have these, like, talks before we even were dating, technically.
This is when you should have the
conversation. Yeah, well, exactly. And
friends.
And if you're not, like, if you're just, like, hopping into a relationship and you have no idea, like, who this person really is, or you don't know if they meet your expectations or, like, your standards, like, don't just hop in a relationship. Don't be like, oh yeah, that's my boyfriend or my girlfriend, if, like, you don't actually know who they are. Yeah. You want to take over?
Where are you at? I'm lost.
The green part on your page.
Oh yeah, okay. So we spent a lot of time hanging out in groups of friends. We took this time to investigate each other. So AJ actually gave me a book when we were friends. It's called The Sacred Search.
Yeah.
Literally, the book starts out like this. It's like, a pastor was sitting across me at the table, and literally, he said this: my marriage constitutes the biggest cross I bury in my life, with tears in his eyes. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, pastors have hard marriages, and they're like carrying it like a cross. Like, this is not okay. And I'm like, I wasn't a Christian my whole life, so I'm like thinking, if this can happen to a pastor, then I'm definitely in trouble, because now I'm going to school to be a pastor and I'm having these relational problems, right? And so that's one thing, but a lot of the things that it teases out in the book is like, you don't need to read this whole book, but you should definitely read like the first 3 or 4 chapters of this book.
Wait, can you say the name of it again?
Sacred,
so if they want to
Sacred
write it down,
Search. The Sacred Search.
Great book.
And it's about finding a spouse. But it says like stuff like, when you're at McDonald's, do they clean up after themselves? Are they throwing their trash away? Are they leaving everything out for the person who works at McDonald's to throw it away? Are they tipping at restaurants? Are they tipping at the barber shop? How nice are they to people? Are they nice to people when you're not around? Do they talk bad about people behind their back? It's just a lot of the practical things of like, okay, if I get married to this person, when I become the guy on the road who is having road rage, how are they going to treat me then? You know what I mean? It's kind of like those little details. Yeah. Around Christmas time, we decided to, we trust each other enough to tell testimonies and all the bad stuff. This is, you take it away.
Okay. Yeah, we pretty much were like, Christian really was the one that initiated this and called me and was like, hey, like, I feel like I just, like, need to tell you, like, my testimony, basically laying on the table, like, this is everything wrong I've ever done in my life, like, take it or leave it, like, I just want you to know this up front, like, so that it's not, like, I'm not spraying this on you later on, or, like, once we are dating, like, we're still just friends at this point, and that was huge to me. Like I said earlier, something that was so important to me was someone who's open and honest. Like, I just seen that, like, break apart so many marriages and relationships. And so the fact that he trusted me enough to just tell me, like, everything, like, all his, like, dirty laundry, and then we, like, did that mutually, and was, like, vulnerable enough to actually, like, share that with me. And, like, that was just, like, so important to me. And it should be important to you too. Like, I think it's easy to think, like, oh, okay, yeah, like, we don't need to talk about that until we're engaged, or we don't need to talk about, like, I don't know, like, if you have a struggle with lust or pornography, like, I'm just going to address this right now, like, deal with that now, because that doesn't just change
Do what
when you're
you
married.
can to mitigate that struggle.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, if you can get an app that helps you have accountability, if you can get parental controls on your phone, if you can quit social media, be off of that stuff, because honestly, girls are throwing their junk in your face all day on that crap. And so, like, anything that, if that is a bent for you, now if drugs is a bent for you, you just don't go to the club. You don't, I mean, you shouldn't go to the club anyways, just saying. Unless it's the Boys and Girls Club and you're volunteering, just saying.
Or Sam's Club.
Sam's Club is fire. They got good pretzels. So, no, but, like, yeah, so, like, you know, if you drink alcohol, you're not going to go to a bar, right? If you have struggle with alcohol. So it's like, how do you mitigate those things in your personal life? And if you're a guy, and you can talk to me about dating, marriage, anything, if you want to sit down and get coffee, I'll pay for the coffee. And we can talk about it, and we can just talk about, hey, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm feeling, these are the things that I'm going through right now. And I'm not going to sit there and be like, how dare you struggle with, you know, like, that is not going to be me at all. And I'm not going to share it with anybody. We're not, like, you could be taking me out for all, you know, for, like, dating advice, and we could just have a conversation of, like, healthy dating relationships. And, like, but if you're struggling with, you know, lust too, you can have that conversation with me. It's a safe place. I'm not going to excommunicate you. I'm not going to be like, you adulterer, or you sexually immoral. I'm going to say, hey, look, God's got grace for this, for you to get closer to him. So let's try to figure out how we can mitigate this struggle, put some boundaries up to kind of, like, help progressively fight this thing. Sorry. But okay, so if you're a guy and you're gonna share everything that you've ever done with a female
Or a girl, either
or
way.
a girl, and you share with, like, if they're talking trash about people regularly, probably not the person you want to have that conversation with, because what happens when you get on their bad side? Are they gonna air your dirty laundry to everybody? So you need to make sure that this person has outstanding character before you even think about it, and not based on emotion, based on, like, proven over time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You share that stuff.
Yeah. Build the trust. And then once that trust is built, be vulnerable with each other. Yeah. So April comes around and we're finally able to start dating. And so we have our first date, which happens to be on Easter, which that year also fell on April Fool's Day. And again, yeah, weird, right? Not normal, but it was the first day we could date, and we were like, oh my gosh, the day's finally here, like, we gotta hang out. But it was Easter, so I was, like, with my family for Easter. I was like, you wanna just come to my family's Easter get together? So our first date was, like, my extended family's Easter, where at it, he asked me to hold his hand for the first time, which I thought was super sweet, because I was like, oh, he asked, like, that was really cool, so, and I respected that time.
Yeah, right. That's how she remembers. I grabbed her by the wrist. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just making sure you guys are paying attention.
But within the first, like, month of really dating is when we establish for ourselves, like, what boundaries do we need to have within this relationship so that we can be holy? Like, we both, before we met each other and in our past, had like, struggles with lust, and so we're like, okay, we know this is an area that in the past we've struggled with, so, like, what can we do to safeguard ourselves to not, like, get into a situation where we're gonna, like, do something that's gonna be dumb. So we together, like, typed up on the computer a little list of boundaries.
Yeah, like, detailed.
Yeah, it was
boundaries.
detailed.
Like, we don't hug for more than 5 seconds boundaries.
Yeah.
Like that weird, right?
Yeah.
Weird. I know.
And I mean, and we'll say this, like a few of them, like I didn't want to kiss until I was married, and that was
Which
something-
worked for me because I can't handle that.
Yeah.
I cannot, once you start making that progression, it's game. Like,
Yeah.
that's where I was. So I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is kind of a relief.
We're both
actually.
kind of just all or nothing people, it turns
Yeah,
out.
so-
So we're like, okay, we just can't do anything or else we're gonna go all the way. So we
Just
had
don't-
very
yeah.
like strict boundaries, which like in a lot of situations could be very legalistic sounding, but we just knew like for us,
Our pitfalls,
Yeah.
our downfalls, our struggles, our temptations, what
Mhm.
we couldn't handle, and we always adopted it to the strictest boundary. So if AJ can't kiss before marriage, then I'm not kissing her before we're married. I mean, we made a rule where we could kiss a couple weeks before because we didn't
2
want our
weeks
first
before.
kiss to be.
don't want it
in
to be
front of
awkward in
everybody.
front of everyone.
So, but with that being said, it's like, my boundary was like, look, there should be no leg touching. Like, there's no reason to be in the leg region. I mean, I don't care if I'm tying your shoe. Like, it just doesn't need to happen. You know, it was above the knee, I'm pretty sure.
You
It was above.
tied my shoe.
Okay, it was above the knee. But still, like, I don't know, that
Yeah.
clear for me. So she's like, okay, I don't get that, but
Right.
but for her, she's like, okay, well, you're taking the strictest, I'm taking the strictest. That's how the agreement is going to transpire from here.
Yeah, so we don't say those specific things to make you feel like, oh, I need to be doing these specific things, but like, what are your triggers?
Yeah, but don't
you
be
know?
stupid either.
Yeah.
Like, don't be like, I can handle this. I'm a big, strong, independent woman or man. Like, if you can't handle something, be honest with
Yeah.
yourself. Sorry, I just have to say that because
Yeah.
okay.
That's good. Be honest
I
with
have
yourself.
to. Because it's like, I've seen it time and time again. It's like, that's not really a struggle for me. And then you hear the story later on where they had the conversation with you and you're like, I told you guys probably shouldn't do that, right? And then that's always awkward too.
Yeah.
It's like,
A big one was like not being alone together at one of our houses.
or
like,
past 11 o'clock at
yeah,
night.
we were
Or,
like we always had to be around someone else, or someone else
Yeah.
had to be home. And then
and the
what
closer we
did-
got to marriage,
Oh yeah.
is that what you're gonna say?
No, go ahead.
The closer we got to marriage, the stricter the boundaries got. Once I proposed, it's like, you know what's coming down the hill, boys, right? Like,
Sex.
there's things coming, right? And so they're coming in hot. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. So you got to straighten up the boundaries, right? Because you're like, okay, we're only going to hang out with your parents because your parents have their stuff together. My family does not. So
Because
you're
you're
not
not
hanging
gonna
out with
keep us
my family.
accountable.
There's no accountability
Yeah.
there. So it's like, you know, I'm not going to make out with AJ in front of her dad, right? That's just like very awkward, right? So.
Yeah, he would have shot you. Anyways, so what we did is we didn't just like have this list of boundaries for ourselves and our own privacy, but we then actually shared those with accountability partners. Which for us, we were like, we want to give these to people who we know are gonna like take this super seriously. So we actually shared it.
With her parents.
Yes. And
Dude.
with a professor at our school who was a mentor to us and who was the dean of the school. So like kind of scary. But we also knew like we want to give this to people who like are gonna ask us like, hey, how are boundaries going?
We
Like,
had in fine print, like, if we break one of these, we have to come to you. Like, we had a signed contract where it's like,
Yeah.
if we break this, we have to come to you and have a conversation of how we are going to have stricter boundaries next time, so we will not be in this situation.
Mhm.
And I think Talia said it the other night. Was the
What did I say?
well, it's like you don't put like the line of like
Oh yeah.
of
That was
like
good.
not having sex at like you don't just put the line at like, okay, we're not gonna have sex.
Right.
Like, because if all of your endorphins are flowing through making out, like you're pretty much touching that line, right? And there's like petting involved and stuff. You're pretty much there. So like
Mhm.
like you want to put the boundary far enough back so that way you're not even having all of these chemicals released in your brain and in your heart and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good. Boundaries, have them. So about a year into dating, I kind of had like a freak out moment because until this point in my walk with the Lord, God had really made everything like very clear of like the direction I needed to go, whether it was like school, calling, like he just made it super clear, like confirmed it with different like signs or like words from the Lord. And so like I was used to, if God wanted me to do something, making it really clear to me. But at this point, like I knew like God wanted me to date Christian, but when it came to when I was like, God, like am I supposed to marry this person? Like I want to, like we're obviously doing this with the purpose of marriage, but like I haven't heard you say like you are to marry Christian. Like, and I was just waiting for that to happen. And so I got really nervous. And so like a year into dating, I was like kind of freaking out, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to marry him. Like I want to, like it's been a great relationship so far, but like what if God doesn't want me to? And so I kind of like freak out, and I'm like, hey, I just need a couple days to like pray and fast, and like can we just not talk for a few days? Which totally absolutely terrified him.
I'm like, what the heck? Like I have done everything right in this situation. I'm like,
what did I do wrong?
how? I'm like, what, are you stupid? Like I literally thought that. I was like, you're an idiot. Like I literally was thinking like, you choose who you marry. Like you don't not God doesn't necessarily have to tell you who you marry, as long as it's lined up with what God wants you to do with your life.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I was like, at this point I'm like, if you won't need to figure that out, that's fine. Like I'll give you that time. But I was kind of irritated at the same time. Like
He was very irritated.
how are you not like? How do you not know? Like this is it right now. Like it's so healthy. It was like one of the healthiest relationships I've ever been in.
Right.
I'm the first relationship too, though. So it's like.
So from his perspective, he's like, no duh, like this is the best it's gonna, like the best it gets kind of thing. He had a lot of bad relationships, but this is the only relationship I'd ever been in at this point. So I'm like, I don't even know, like, are we doing this right? I'm like always like freaking out about stuff. And so I like, in that time of praying, like God really did, I feel like, not in like a thus saith the Lord thing, but in like a gentle like peacefulness of like, no, like I've given you the wisdom to make your own decisions. Like you have the Bible, like base your decisions off of that. Like I trust you to do that. Like trust me that I'm gonna take care of it no matter what you do, kind of thing. And so I was like, okay, I think that means I can marry him. But then all the pressure of like, but if I marry him and I like mess up, then it's like my fault because like I made this decision. But then I finally, at the end of like 2-3 days, it wasn't that long, it felt like really long, was like, okay, I think I'm good, like we can keep dating. Sorry, I didn't mean to like overreact or whatever. So that was fun.
So later down the road, we're ready to get engaged, and so we go to the Padre, as you should, men and scholars of future generations and influencers, I should say. When you have that conversation, you should have that conversation with the dad and be like, hey, can I marry your daughter? And he said no, which is great to hear when you ask for somebody's daughter's hand in marriage. But he said she'd rather wait until she was graduated from college. So as a man, I said, screw that, and I married, no, I said, no, just kidding. No, but, you think that, right? But it's like, I thought about it, I'm like, if I had a daughter, and I wanted the guy to honor me and my wishes for my daughter, then I should do that for him, and I didn't want to start on a bad foot. So I would recommend just wait the year. Save some money up. Marriage is expensive. Save the money. So it's worth it.
Yeah. So that began the like longest 9 months of my life, because we had to push our wedding plans off 9 months for me to finish school. Which was super, super hard for me, especially.
COVID hit though, so.
Yeah, so I was already not in a great mental state because of COVID and stuff. I was already like a basket case, if I'm being honest. So that was just like, I was like, I'm falling apart. But it all ended up working out, and it's kind of cool because looking back at it, I'm like, oh, that was so God's timing. Like, as much as it pains me to say this, because I'm like, I like being right, but I'm like, no, like, it was good that we waited, even though it was really, really hard. So he ended up proposing on his birthday, which I did not see coming. So, and then it was kind of cool because I feel like God really did bless us for waiting, and we were able to find a house.
Yeah, things just lined up like supernaturally.
Yeah, that were like we
for
weren't
example,
even looking yet.
There was a huge snowstorm. I'm going over to my buddy Caleb's house, and he's are you guys still present right now? Are we tired?
We're gonna try to wrap this up soon. We're kind of
we don't have to, but I just want to make sure people are okay. Do we need a drink break? Does somebody need to grab? Does somebody need to go tinkle?
I get it. I had to earlier.
I just don't want you guys to zone out and miss things, right? And then it not be valuable. Like that's why they have intermissions. But so I'm asking that not passively, but like. I want you guys to be here right now because this is important stuff. I know it's a story, but yeah. So, anyways, I'm trying to honor God by honoring your dad, and we wait and we do all this stuff, and we're trying to honor God with our relationship. And so when you honor God, who knows, he blesses you. You know, if you're seeking after the Lord, he will bless you. So it's the middle of this huge snowstorm, right? And I go to my buddy Caleb's house to spend the night on his couch, because that's what homies are for. And so I go to his house, I park out front of his, I feel like on the way there, I feel like the Lord's telling me that there's like going to be a mobile home for sale on this corner in this trailer park.
Which he calls me to tell me about.
I'm like, I call her on the way, I'm like, I feel like there's a mobile home on this corner that we're going to have. Like, I feel like the Lord's telling me there's a mobile home for us on this corner.
And I'm like, is there a
by
sign?
my friend's house.
And he's like, no, I just feel that.
Yeah,
I'm
like, I'm not even at the trailer park yet, and
talk.
I'm feeling this. And so I say to AJ, I call AJ, I said, I don't know if it's the pizza last night or what it is, but I feel like the Lord's telling me like this, I'm just picturing this in my head, like there's our home for us on this corner. So anyways, I go there, I drive around the corner, there's no houses for sale. So I'm like, it was the pizza last night, right? I wake up the next day, and there's that huge snowstorm, so we have to go out shoveling. I put on this ski mask and everything, because it's just frigid out, and the neighbor lady comes out, and she is ticked off that I parked over by her driveway because it didn't get plowed well, which I told my friend about the night before. So this lady already hates my buddy, but she hates my car and me as well with the ski mask on, which she doesn't know what I look like. So she ended up putting out a for sale sign on her house that morning. And I see it, and I'm like, Caleb, ain't no way. So I go back inside, I said, Caleb, this lady cannot see me, because I'm going to try to get this house. It's just the next door neighbors with my buddy, and it's on the corner that I had pictured. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I say, so he goes out, he finishes shoveling all this stuff, but there's a for sale sign. So that's insane already, right? So I see these vehicles coming by the house, and like, I don't know why. Everybody and their mother was out looking for a trailer that morning. I don't know if it's because school was canceled or what, but like they would drive by and they would ask this lady while she's shoveling her driveway, like, how much you selling it for? Like, did you just list this? It looks great. I want to give me your number and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, this is great. It's like 3 people drive by and say this to her, you know, while I'm there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she just put the sign up. So I'm like, I got to be on this. So I call this lady on the phone. It goes to voicemail. And I pray to the Lord. I said, Lord, what do you want me to say to this lady? And he says to me, tell her you're a twin. So I tell this lady, I tell her on the phone, on the voicemail, I said, hey, me and my twin want to come check out this mobile home you have for sale or whatever. And we were wondering how much you're asking for it. She calls me back, she says, no way, I'm a twin too. I can't believe it. I'm like, yeah, that's crazy. So it's just like this crazy experience of like this house. And then I have to like show up to her house in a different car when I go to the house, because she knows what my car looks like from the snowstorm, right? So she hates me, the idea of me, but she doesn't know it's me she hates. You know what I'm saying? So that was pretty fun. Just a fun story, but...
And then she sold us the house.
She sold us the house.
Got a great deal on it. And then we closed on it on April Fool's Day.
For twice as much.
But we actually got it.
Joke's on you. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it was just like, I don't know. When you're seeking the Lord first, He will align things for you. He will create ways for you. He'll make a girl show up at your school who's called to the Philippines. When you're called to the Philippines, when you say there's no chance, and then she walks in and she says she's called to the Philippines, and you're like, holy crap, there's no way. So like God does that stuff, and He's been doing that stuff regularly for me. And the closer I am in the seasons to Him, the more times I see Him evident through my daily walk. So I just want to encourage you guys with that. Sorry, back to the story. What is it?
So then we get married.
Thank you.
I can start talking now. So we get married on Memorial Day. Because the venue
everything's
was way
on a holiday.
cheaper.
Isn't that crazy? She found that
intentional.
out. I wasn't even paying attention.
We didn't even find that out
I'm a
until
guy.
we
I
were
don't
married.
care.
We're like, why does every significant moment in our lives have happened on a holiday? And we're like, whoa, this is crazy. I don't know, but it's just a thing now at this point. But yeah, the venue was like half the price on Memorial Day, so we're like, yes, let's do that.
And then 9/11 was when she decided to come apply for a job here, which was even crazier.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I didn't
So
think
it's
about
like
that.
and that's not a holiday, but I mean like,
Oh yeah.
well, you know what I mean?
Is it?
I don't know if we're
Like,
going
what do
in
you
that
call
direction.
that? Sorry.
Yeah, so it was just like, I know it was
Yeah.
a time mark, right? I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's the wrong word for it.
Yeah, maybe I should shut up. Continue.
Let's just pretend that didn't happen. So we get married. Woo!
Yeah.
We're finally married. And it's great. We're living our best lives. A couple things I just want to mention about marriage that, like, I don't know, hopefully will be helpful. For me, I had a very sheltered upbringing. And so I didn't know a lot about marriage and the things that went with marriage, sex. And so I'm just gonna be open with you guys right now, okay? We're all adults in the room, right? So
AJ's
it's
not
fine.
bashful.
No, I'm not. But I just want to say this to anyone in the room: whether you've been exposed to things or not, whether you are sheltered or not, it doesn't matter. Either way, whenever it is that you do get married, it's important that you have realistic expectations within marriage about like what a healthy relationship looks like, about balance, about like expectations of like who's gonna do what, but also about sex. I'm just gonna put it out there. So if all you know about sexuality is what you've seen in movies, then like just do yourself a favor. Don't look stuff up on Google or anything, but like when you're engaged and you're about to get married, do some like helpful research. I'm gonna give you a resource so that you have a good way of researching it, so you're not just Googling things or asking people that like don't know what they're talking about. But there's a book called Intended for Pleasure. It's about sex. So don't read it, guys, if you're single or if you're just dating. I'm watching y'all.
You do not need
Don't
to read
it
this book.
yet.
It's not
But
a novel.
if you're
You need to read it.
engaged or if you're planning on being engaged in the future and you're close to being married, I would highly, highly recommend it. Because, like I said, if you're expecting things to happen the way that things happen in the movies, then you probably don't have realistic expectations. And if you know what to expect a little bit more realistically, you're going to be a lot happier in the long run. Just putting that out there. So something, we read that together. Our premarital counselor recommended it to us, and it was super healthy and helpful. And yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there. Intended for Pleasure is what it's called. And now that we've been married for what, almost 3 years. Oh my gosh, not quite 3 years. I mean, we're so happy that we were able to have accountability partners, have boundaries, have, not like, what's the word I'm looking for? Sacrifice our own like expectations, or not expectations, what's the word? Standards, but also being able to have grace for each other. And that's something I kind of want to talk about. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if you have a struggle now, especially if it's about porn or masturbation or something like that, being married isn't going to fix that. So no matter what stage you're in, if you're single, if you're dating, if you're engaged, if you're married, it doesn't matter. Whatever stage you're in, deal with that now and address that now, and you're going to be really happy that you did, because marriage isn't going to fix that. There's things that like I, as a human being who's married in a very happy, healthy, like content marriage, like I get tempted sometimes to do things I shouldn't do. And so it's so important that even within marriage, you continue to have a healthy, open communication. Like now, like we used to have different accountability partners. Now we're each other's accountability partners. And so like, if I'm I mean, whether it's sexually or something else, maybe you really struggle with worry, maybe you really struggle with loneliness or isolation, whatever, maybe you really struggle with like greed or whatever it is, fill in the blank. But I think
Stealing.
especially
people go to stores and they have this urge to just take
whatever it
something.
is, anything that's sin. But I think especially sexually, like be open with each other and have grace for each other. Because if I'm struggling with something, like I will call Christian. Like the other day, I was like, I just feel like I'm not in a good mental headspace right now. I feel like I shouldn't be alone. And so I called Christian, and he was at work, and I was like, I don't even think he's gonna be able to pick up. And I was like, he picked up, and I was like, oh, that was God, thank you. And I was like, hey, I'm just really struggling right now. Like, I feel like I shouldn't be alone. And he was like, go work at stuff at the coffee shop. Like, I don't care if it costs money. Like, I'd rather you like be somewhere where you're not gonna be struggling than like put yourself into a
Yeah,
situation where
being
you're
alone,
gonna,
yeah.
you know, do things you're not supposed to do. And so like having each other's back for that and having openness and honesty and being able to like trust each other with that is so important even within marriage. And
be realistic, because here's the thing, like, if you think you're the hottest Joe or Schmo in the world, like, you're not. Like, you're just, I mean, there's always going to be somebody more strong, more athletic. There's always going to be somebody who's prettier. There's always going to be somebody who's more funny than you, who's nicer, who's kinder, who's more authoritative than you, who is has more money than you. There's always going to be that thing, right? And so being, like, I understand, like, there's the possibility. That's why when I told AJ, like, when I asked her to date me, it was like, there's an opportunity that somebody might come in who's better looking, nicer than me, all this stuff. For me, it's like, I don't know, like, you know, and guys, it's like this. It's like obviously there's going to be other attractive people that walk by, right? But the choice is like, you're the chosen one. Like, this is Neo in the Matrix, and like, she is the chosen one, and I have chosen her. And so that is sacred in itself. Like, we have chosen to hold ourselves for each other. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't mean I didn't struggle before a marriage or anything, or even that I don't ever have temptation anymore. But the fact is we're communicating that. And also, I'm saying, like, hey, look, you're the chosen one. I'm not chasing after these other women or trying to have conversations. I don't talk or text to other women. Like, I don't have friends that are girls. Like, I just don't. Like, they're not my friends. They're coworkers, they're colleagues, and they're at a distance. Like, I just don't do that. I don't put myself in that situation, okay? And so, like, you know, these are things that, like, you know, we need to be aware of, you know, she's the chosen one. So it's like, I don't know. I just want to encourage you guys as that, you know, be open with your girl and say, like, hey, like, you have to understand, like, there's somebody out there better looking than me. I need to know that you're choosing me. You know, like, even if I get fat, you know, like, even if, like, whatever it is, you know what I mean?
Love you even if you're
but, like, we have these superficial rules of, like, even if I have $0 in my bank account, we're good? All right, cool, that's great. So it's like, I don't know, just that stuff, sorry.
And I think also, if you're expecting someone to be open and honest with you about stuff like that, like, you have to create the space for that. If you aren't willing to respond with grace, if you're going to cast judgment, like, you can't expect someone to be open with you like that. So, like, be gracious. Like, let each other be
And I'm not
humans.
saying I'm not gonna sit here and say to AJ, like, oh my gosh, that girl is so hot. Like, she is, like, built right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna sit there and say, I'm also not gonna say that to my guy friends. That's not right. If I have a thought like that, I'm just gonna be like, you know what? That's not of God. Like, I'm rebuking that. That's not where God wants me to go with my thinking process. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's not like, I'm sitting here, but obviously there's like people, AJ and I will be like, oh, they're a pretty person, like, or they're handsome, or they're like just a good looking person, or they're a nice person. Like, it doesn't mean that I'm saying like, oh, they're just like gorgeous and like 10 out of 10. Like, just like, don't be crazy about it like that.
Yeah.
But just say like, okay, they're a nice person. I see what I mean, like, they're a nice person, so.
Are you guys still with us?
Yes.
We're wrapping it up now.
If you're not, say I'm not with you anymore.
Yeah.
That is fine. Like,
You can be open and
that
honest.
is
This is
straight.
a
Be
safe
open.
place.
This is
I will not condemn you.
a safe place. If you say that, I swear I'll throw you.
Okay, so Ephesians 5:22 and 26. This is so like typical, the typical husband-wife verse thing. But I just wanted to read this real quick. For wives, this means submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For a husband is the head of his house, head of his wife, as Christ is the head of the church. He is the savior of his body, the church. So I'm going to take a minute to address the ladies in here. Personally, I hate this verse. I'm just going to be forthright with that. I don't like it. But it's the Bible, so I have to live by it. And I think in the culture that we live in today is like very feminist, very like woman should be in power, like woman shouldn't be controlled by a man. And realistically, like, that's not a biblical concept. Yeah, men shouldn't be controlling.
Right. They should be loving.
Exactly.
And setting an example for their bride and not lording it over them.
Mm-hmm. Right. But women do need to be submissive to their husbands. Submission is not something that's easy for me. I'm just going to put that out there. I like to call the shots at times, but it's something that because I love my husband and respect him enough, and I want to have a healthy relationship, there are times that I have to...
She doesn't go shopping at night.
Yeah, that was something...
If it's dark out, she's not walking through a Meyer parking lot ready to get kidnapped. Where I grew up, that does not fly. We don't do that.
That's just a small example, but really, like, I used to go shopping after dark by myself all the time. Went to Meyer at midnight, like, probably a couple times a week. I don't know, it was just weird, it was my thing. And when we got married, he was like, you can't do that, like that, you're putting yourself in danger. And I was just like, well, what's the big deal? Like, I can take care of myself, I'm fine. And he was like, no, like, I'm responsible for you. I care about your well-being, like, please don't do that. And I was like, okay, yeah, I guess, like, this is for my best. And sometimes...
And then I would say, look, if you really want to go, I will sacrifice my time, my sanity, and I will go with you to the store when you want to go. Like, I will take that sacrifice to go with you. If you really want to go that bad. And then it's like, for some reason, it's just not as attractive after that because I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding.
I've definitely dragged him out to the store
but yeah,
a couple
so like,
times.
You know, if you're going to have that, that line, then at least be man enough to go with the lady to the store if she wants to go, you know?
Yeah, that's good. So then he continues, as the church submits to Christ, so you wives should submit to your husbands in everything. For husbands, this means love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave up his life for her to make her holy and clean, washed by the cleansing of God's word. So really, like, ladies, we really get the good end of the deal. Like, guys are supposed to, like, literally sacrifice their lives for us. And so, like, even in that little illustration, even though it's silly, like, he's sacrificing what he wants by coming to the store with me, but it's, like, out of a place of love. And so, like, his job is to, like, love me, and my job is to respect him, really. And obviously, that love and respect are mutual both ways, but, like, those are the really big roles. Even and it's not popular to live like that, but realistically, it makes a way healthier marriage. And I feel like at the beginning of our marriage, I really, really struggled with that, and I would get really upset when he, like, said something like, I don't think you should do that. I'd be like, well, what's the big deal? Like, kind of freak out about it a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. But I have started to realize, like, okay, yeah, like, this is for my best. Like, most of the time if he's saying something, like, or making, like, a hard line about something, like, it's genuinely for my best. And so I'm like, I have to keep that in mind. And also, if, like, he makes a bad call, like, God's gonna judge him, not me. So, like, I really get the good end of the deal, honestly. But anyways, yeah.
But you asking your girl not to shop at night by herself is not a bad, like, it's not a bad deal.
It's really
a good
not.
idea.
It's really not. Yeah. And I'm grateful for it now. So we just want to give you a couple little practical resources, and then we're going to open up for questions if you guys have any questions. So he mentioned the book, The Sacred Search. There we go, it's up there. Sweet, thank you. Great book if you're single right now, or if you're dating. I would highly recommend this book. I read the whole thing before we met. He read, like, parts of it and still got, like, the main concept. Probably don't even need to read the whole thing, honestly. Yeah. I think the first half was, like, really where most of the content is. Maybe I'm wrong.
You don't have to put a landmark on it. If you're understanding the book, like, you're good. Like, just move on, because it is a lengthy for no reason. It's repetitive.
It is repetitive, but it's a really good resource. So definitely, like, something worth minimally flipping through. I mentioned earlier, Intended for Pleasure for those who are engaged. Don't read otherwise. Love and Respect is another one that's really good. Did I put that one there? Yeah.
Do the video series together. Nobody has time to read books anymore. Continue.
Legit. We did the video series. I don't think we even finished that one either.
No, because it got repetitive.
It also got kind of repetitive. But really great resource. Maybe not as applicable for every single couple, but whether you're dating or engaged or married, this is applicable, I think, to some degree. Talking about how men need respect, women need love generally. Now, I think some couples, it's not as stereotypical as that, and so it might not apply in every context, but it was applicable for us and helpful for us to, like, put words to what we were feeling.
Covenant Eyes. Take screenshots of your phone when you're just scrolling and stuff like that. It's at random, and you have an ally, so it emails the screenshots to your ally. I have Covenant Eyes. I pay for it every month.
How much a month is it?
I don't know, like,
so this is
$25
this is
a month.
so
but
the
that's
first
worth it.
The first two are book resources. The rest of these are, like, safeguards against lust.
Yeah, so with the Covenant Eyes thing, it's just like, the reality is like, my mom is on it and my wife is on it. So it's like, if there's something on my feed that I don't, there's this thing of it's not private anymore, right? And so it's hard to sin when it's not private, right? Sin likes to be in the dark. And so that's helpful. I keep that on my phone. I think I know a lot of pastors who actually keep that on their phone. People who serve God, just because there's no point in having the freedom if you can't handle it. And there's a lot of people who can't nowadays. Yeah. The other thing I want to say is parental controls. AJ is literally my phone parent. I'm okay with that. Does it make me feel like less a man? Does it make me feel less masculine? I do not care. You know, I want safety and safeguards in my life. Makes you a healthy person. So that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that was all of them. So.
Questions? We gotta move quick.
Yeah, I think that's it. We're done. We're done talking. Sorry, we talked a lot. Any questions? Any questions? Nothing is too serious of a question.
I feel
Or
like
too
we
deep of
need
a
to move
question.
on. I'm